Welcome. I'm about to share with you what I think is the single best strategy that I have for raising your score on the SAT and the ACT, and it has to do with coding each item and then using your time wisely at the end of the test. Hopefully, if you do enough practice, you will have time at the end of every test to be going over some of the problems, and then the question is, which problems should you go over? So let's take a look at the code and see how this plays out. If you recall, you're supposed to be marking your answers on the test, marking out the answers that you're eliminating if you're guessing. So let's just pretend that that's what's going on this page over here. And let's say that for number 1, I eliminated answer choice D and E. I can't tell you why, we're just pretending. And so you're guessing from among A, B, and C, and let's say that you chose A as your guess. So that would qualify as a G here in the margin because you knew enough to eliminate 2 answer choices. Okay? For number 2, let's say that this was one where you used a strategy and you figured it out and you're pretty sure that you know what you're doing. So your answer is a sure, and you mark your answer on the test. I know that's not the right answer, but we'll pretend. Okay, then for number 3, this just looked like so much to read that you just don't want to do it. So you put an arrow here and you're choosing to come back to this item when there's more time available. Okay? And let's say that for number 4, out of the answer choices A, B, C, D, E, you were only able to eliminate one of them, and you picked one of the other ones. Your favorite letter is D, and so that one is a wild guess. Okay? So we'll just pretend that we've got one of each of these kinds of cases. So a sure is one where you wouldn't necessarily bet your life savings on it, but you felt like you knew what you were doing and you found your answer among the answer choices, so you feel good about that. A guess, you have to eliminate 2 of the answer choices. When you can't do that and you answer anyway because there's no penalty for wrong answers, so that's going to be a wild guess, a W. And the arrow indicates come back to this one more time is available. Okay, so here we are. You've gotten through the whole test section and you have a few minutes remaining. How are you going to use your time? I'd like you to take a moment right now and make a note of what you're going to do, what you usually do. Whether you have your own code or not, you probably have some sort of a technique, a strategy that you use. So make a note of that. I'll be quiet for a moment and then we'll talk about it. Okay, I hope everybody decides that the first thing you want to do is go back to the arrows. So this is the first thing that you do, because that was the whole point. You drew the arrow there so that you would come back to this one when more time was available. Now, what's going to happen to those arrows? Well, you'll either work through it because now you have the time and your answer will be a sure, or you'll eliminate a couple of answer choices by whatever method and guess, or you'll have a wild guess. But it will become one of the other 3 choices. So your choices are now down to just these. Okay? So you have sures. Those were ones where you felt like you knew what you were doing. Wild guesses where you didn't know at all what you were doing, and guesses that were somewhere in between. Right now you need to tell the truth when you're taking a multiple choice test. What is it that you usually do at this point? I have taught this with hundreds, maybe thousands of kids over the years. And if we take a vote, and I always start with the voting at the bottom with the wild guesses, I ask how many would go back to their wild guesses. About half the kids raise their hands. And then I ask about guesses, and the other half of the kids raise their hands, and I ask, does anybody want to check your shores? And they look at me like I've just landed from another planet. And in fact, that's what I'm going to suggest. So my single best piece of advice for you is that after you've done the come back to items, you spend the rest of your time checking your shores. And you will learn from experience whether you should check your shores starting at the beginning. That would be for somebody who has a little bit of butterflies in the stomach at the start of a test and needs to settle in and might make careless mistakes at the beginning. And you'll know this because if you do practice tests, you'll be able to see your pattern of right and wrong answers. Or, in more cases, it makes sense to be checking backwards through the exam because the harder items are usually toward the back of the exam. Not always, but usually. And so those might be the ones where you're more likely to have made a mistake. And what you're looking for when you check your shores is not just, oh yes, I did this, but to really look at the work that's next to the problem and see whether you really agree with it, or you're really answering the question that was asked in the problem, and so forth. Okay? So now I have to persuade you not to go back to your guesses or your wild guesses. I'll start with the wild guesses. The wild guesses are items where within the last half hour or hour or so you had no idea how to do it. If you had no idea how to do it then, chances are you still don't have any idea how to do it. Spending your time on that is just wasting your time. You took a wild guess. I would urge you to pick a letter and stick with it when it's a wild guess, if you haven't eliminated that letter. For 5 answer choice items, I believe E comes up maybe a little more than its fair share of the time, and for 4 answer choices, I believe B comes up a little more than its fair share of the time, but whatever letter you pick, just stick to it. Okay, so that's why it's not a good idea to look at the wild guesses. What about your guesses? A lot of people think they're going to do a better job guessing. If your job of guessing the first time around was that you eliminated 2 of the answer choices and sort of mentally flipped a 3-sided coin or rolled a 3-sided die, which doesn't exist, but you know what I'm talking about. The die, the coin, doesn't get smarter through the passage of time. And again, you are just wasting your time. Furthermore, if you're looking at your guesses and your wild guesses, how are you feeling about the test section that you just completed? I think that you're not feeling great about it because you're looking at things you don't know how to do. And I don't think you're raising your score. So what could possibly happen when you're checking your shores? In my opinion, one of 2 good things, and they're both one of 2 things, and they're both good. One good thing that could happen is you're checking your shores and they look pretty good to you. You're agreeing with your answers, and this is going to make you feel confident and successful. And I think that's a good way to feel at the end of a section when what's about to happen is the proctor says, stop, put your pencils down, turn the page, ready, begin, and then you're going to start the next section of the test. Or the other thing that could happen is that you catch a mistake and you're changing a wrong answer to a right answer and definitely improving your score. So those are both good outcomes. The object of the game here is to get as many right answers as you can, and I think that checking your shores is the way to go. So my advice is, first you go back to the arrows, they become shores, guesses, wild guesses, and then you just check your shores only until time is up. And good luck to you.